Thank you so much for joining us at Mikey's Untitled Music Show. Today, I have my brother Jeremy. His name is Jeremy Esquer. He is our brother from another mother, as you can probably see. But we are brothers, all right? We're definitely brothers. But Yeah, I had Andrew, my little brother, on this like these first few episodes are gonna be a lot of my family members because one, they're helping me out, of
Yeah.
course, because my family, then they're great and they're awesome and we're a great family. But another one is because, I kind of, this is my chance also of really getting to know like my family
Yeah.
because uh we didn't grow up together. You, me, Andrew, June, April. We all really well. You guys grew up, together. You and Andrew, and June came later, but we didn't grow up together. I grew up with my two sisters, Riven and Ashley, and even then, you don't really know what's going on in somebody else's head
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
you ask. You know what I mean? So this is a good time for us to get to know each other also. Um, Jeremy, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing now, you freaking genius?
Well, I'm currently residing in Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm getting my doctorate in music composition, and that's essentially to summarize my whole life. It's basically led up to this point. I mean, everything that I've done in my life has been dedicated solely to learning everything I can about music. It first started off as being in a metal band from like the age of 12 all the way to the age of 21, and then around 15 is kind of where I discovered a love of actually composition. Before that, it was just mainly a bunch of songwriting, a bunch of just very straightforward song constructions, intro, verse, chorus, verse, some kind of bridge or whatever, basic song making, and at 15 um is when I really found a passion for this other side of music making, which is composition. So basically writing stuff for larger ensembles. Instead of being a four-piece band, I was writing for like a woodwind, woodwind family, the brass family, percussion family, all at the same time, and then it just maximized the amount of people I wrote for. And so yeah, basically age 15 discovered that I had a love for doing something that just wasn't, metal music. At that point I also, discovered, classical music, and I just found a fascination with it. And I decided right there and then, okay, music composition is something that I want to do. I knew at the age of 12 though, I'm sorry. I knew at the age, yeah, 11 or 12 that I wanted to do something with music.
Hmm.
And it started first as being in a band and touring with a band. That's what it started with. I wanted to write my own music and tour wherever I could tour with my friends and whatnot. And then at 15, that's kind of when the outlook of it kind of changed. And then also taking consideration other people's experiences with touring, I kind of had a I kind of what's the word? I changed my plan because I didn't necessarily think that I would be able to enjoy being in the van with the same guys all the time, and not taking showers and being on that kind of life. Like I it seemed cool when I was younger, but then I thought about it, I was like, well, you know, I can get impatient and I don't like being around people all the time. As it was, I was already getting tired with some of my bandmates. Even my brother, was getting tired of my ass too. So I mean, like, so I could.
Friggin' Andrew was telling me like at first you didn't want him to join the
I
band. Is that
didn't.
true?
I
Why
didn't.
not?
Well, because like when I started off, it was me and my best friend. I think you met my best friend. His name is Eddie Chavarin. And it was just me and him. And Eddie actually is the one that brought up the idea that he wanted my brother in there. And being that little kid, I was like, I don't want my brother in my band. I don't want him. And he was like 4 years younger than I was. So I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want him in there. But finally, Eddie's the one that convinced me to be like, dude, just let him in. He already plays. He's good already, and he's there with you. Like, just add him. Like, come on. So that's how it happened. It was because of Eddie, that Andrew was, joined the band. And it's funny because, you know, me and Andrew's relationship growing up wasn't that great, mainly because of me. Um for many reasons, I grew up very angry. I was pissed off all the time, and sadly Andrew got the brunt of my anger. So like, growing up, I wasn't the best. And and it's funny because now, we playing for as long as we've been playing, there's a instant chemistry with Andrew. We haven't played, like, the last time I played with him was actually recently, which was like maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. But before that, we had not played together in
Hmm.
over 5 years.
And was that just like a little jam session that you
Yeah,
guys
it
were
was it
having?
was it was a random thing. I was at Eddie's
Hmm.
dad's house, and usually when I visit his dad's, we have a cookout, drink, have a good time, and we at the end of the night we have a jam out. We just play for hours. And we've always wanted Andrew to be participate, but me and Andrew were never in the same vicinity for that to be able to be a thing. And by
Yeah.
chance, this one time around, he was there. We were all together, and he finally, Andrew came over. And originally it was us three: Eddie, me, and my brother, in the band. And we got back together and we played, and it felt like we never stopped playing, you know.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
and it's amazing to me how, how we started, me not wanting him in the band, and Eddie being the determining factor, the person to, essentially convince me. And now I have to say that me and Andrew's musical journey is very intertwined in a direct and very indirect way, because we both have such different parallels in the way we approach music now. We started in a basically in a metal band, and now he does like house music, and I do, experimental avant-garde music, like weird shit.
Seeing you go from that over to like classical music and composition, and seeing Andrew go over to like electronica and EDM and stuff like that. It's just how did your how did you go that way? It was just creatively, or like you just changed your mind, or was it that thing that you were talking about? Just, I don't know if I want to be in a band my whole life, so what other way can I get into music, you know?
I think there was multiple things that eventually took me into the path that I am now. um One of them, I think, is mainly my curiosity for things. As a little kid, I've always been heavily curious about everything. I was always that one kid that would ask so many questions for everything. And being that music was something that is probably my number one love in this life,
Yeah.
I was highly curious about it, and I wanted to learn more about not just what I was already doing, but what more is there to do with it. And then
Hmm.
I discovered, like, all, these composers at 15 that I'm like, they're writing these big symphonies, these big crazy works that, like, how do you know how to write for all that? Like, how do you know how to write for clarinet, flute, trumpets? How do you know how to write for, like, the harp, piano? Like, how do you know how to write for all that? Like, what do you have to do in order to achieve that? And then in mix with all of that, there was these I started hearing these, like, technical death metal bands that were like had like symphonic sounds behind it, and I was like, holy hell, you can combine these two worlds together. That's super crazy, you
Bro,
know
the first time I saw or I heard of, rock and like symphony combined, like classical music, is when Metallica did their
Oh yeah, I think I
did
know what
their
you're talking about.
orchestra shit.
Yep.
Bro, they played it. I remember they played it on VH1. It was live and shit. I'm not sure if it was live, but they played it on VH1 or MTV back in the day, and it was just, oh my. One thing I love is music crossovers. I
Yeah.
love music crossovers. So like when you get rap metal, like Rage
Mm-hmm.
Against the
Mm-hmm.
Machine, Linkin
Mm-hmm.
Park, when you get like bands that do orchestra like Metallica. I know
Mm-hmm.
there's other bands like that like, strong power like power rock bands that, that work well. Orchestra with electric guitar works like so well and
Yeah.
drums, like, if put together correctly, it works so well.
Yeah.
Like you can even say like in Spanish music when reggaeton was only kind of like rapping.
Mm.
Like back in the day, it was only
Mm-hmm.
rapping, and then but now you incorporate singing with it, and it just sounds much better,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
beat with singing rather
Sure.
than how it was meant to with rap. Um, what are a couple things that, you thought you didn't would sound wouldn't sound good together, but actually do for you
During that time or like now?
during that time? No, like during that time that made you actually want to like, pursue that.
Well, that's the thing, man, is, you know, I guess let me preface what I'm about to say with this. Um, so being in the metal community and being in a metal band and being a metal head, right? You
Mhm.
know, that comes with a lot of certain characteristics, and one of them is being in that community. Society sees you as a misfit, but within that community of metalheads, everybody's seen as a unique individual, and everybody's accepted for who they are and what they are, what they do, whatever you are, you're accepted. So from the get-go, you enter this world with an open mindset. I mean, the majority of the time, of course, you have those outliers where people are not, necessarily, accepting, but it's
Mhm.
at least in my experience, it's been very rare. And I think with that kind of mindset of openness and just genuine love for what I do, I never saw anything as that's not going to work, but more
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
if I do have an inkling of why it might not work, then my curiosity arises and I want to basically try to do something to try to make it work. And it's
Yeah.
funny because that kind of mindset has now transitioned and develops way more now, because now my whole selling point for myself is I don't care what the instrumentation is. I have a topic. You tell me what the topic is, and I'll make it work. Because
Mm.
my whole goal is to be curious and to figure out what the capabilities of certain things are in terms of instruments, their timbre, their mechanical constraints, what have you. And then going from there, understanding that, and then trying to fit the topic within that world. So I don't think I ever had the mindset of, well, this doesn't work, so I'm not gonna, you know, do anything to go forth with it, but more so it's like, well, it might not work, but fuck it, I'm gonna try it. And most of the times, that curiosity and that challenge, because I'm a very competitive person, and when I put challenges on myself, I fight with myself, and I want to make it work. I want it to
Mhm.
be I just want it to make it work, and it's going to work because I know I can make it work, because I proved myself for the first time, that I can do something or challenge the status quo of what I have for my future. And it's always been a challenge. I've always been told that, it's not going to be a successful outcome whatsoever. So I always took that as a challenge. And my whole curiosity has been in that kind of vein where everything's a challenge for me and I'm going to make it work and figure it out. And it's going to work regardless, so I've never had that mindset.
What's well, like so, like what's your earliest like memory of music? Like mine is like I always tell, I mean, whoever keeps listening, you're gonna hear the same exact thing from mine. So I'm so sorry about that. I'm gonna, try to move forward a little faster. But my thing was, my first introduction was music and worship music, going to church.
Mm.
We went to church every week. We had a song service every Wednesday and Sunday, twice on Sunday, and every Saturday we had live music. We had bands. We had like rock bands. We had Spanish bands. We had like alternative bands. There was
Yeah.
like people that would just sing like kind of like Backstreet Boy, not Backstreet Boys, but like girls, would get up on the stage. My
Sure,
mom was
sure.
actually in a band called Genesis, and my dad was in a band called Dead to Sin.
Oh,
My mom
wait,
would
that too sin. That
yeah.
name rings a bell. Actually, did he perform a lot?
They would perform at they wouldn't perform. They stopped performing when I was probably like 11. They wouldn't
Oh,
perform at
okay.
like they would go to different like Christian like discipleships or different
Sure.
churches to go play and stuff sometimes, but they wouldn't normally just play at um at my church.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But my dad was a drummer. They had their like, covers, but it was at church. Like my that's where my music, started. I had live music every week,
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
least 3 times a week,
Yeah.
sometimes 4 times a week, because we had it on like a park outreach on Thursday where they would go and play and preach or whatever. And that was my introduction to it. And I thought that was just normal. I thought, oh, everybody listens to all this stuff.
Hmm.
People putting putting themselves out there, yeah, for God and stuff like that too.
Hmm.
But they're actually putting themselves out there, performing and stuff like that. And like we would get a drama also. So the arts is really huge in my life.
Sure.
What's like your earliest memory of just music and you enjoying music?
So it's funny because I don't think I was immersed in it as much as what it sounds like you were, you know. Funny
Hmm.
enough, you know, in terms of church, I hated going to church.
Hmm.
My mom couldn't keep me, from going, and also, you know, at least in in my later ages, like in my early teens, is when I started really listening to metal, and sadly, I was around people, family, and you know, religious people that, deem me to be of something that I was not. Like a satanic follower because I listen to metal music, the typical
Yeah.
bullshit, And
Yeah.
because of that, I ended up hating all of that, so I
Hmm.
despised it. And actually for a good portion of my life, I was definitely atheist. I didn't believe in any of that stuff
Oh,
because
yeah. When it's pushed down your throat, like I can say, like also, I don't have a problem with. I believe in God.
yeah,
I'm gonna say that
yeah,
right now, guys. Like
yeah,
I believe in a God. I believe that this place was created. If you don't believe that, that's totally fine. That's just what I believe, and that's what I feel.
yeah,
It's just if you tell me, it's just you can put as much evidence as you can in front of me, but in the back of my head, it's always gonna say you really don't know. Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows
no, nobody
fucking
knows.
like
Nobody has
anything.
definitive answers. Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like we can measure what we can measure, but in the beginning, nobody knows.
Mhm.
Why? Because nobody was fucking there. And you
Yeah.
can't, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you can't say 100% this is what happened. So that 1% is actually what keeps me, and I've seen other things in my life before. We can get into that a whole other day, but
Yeah.
I've seen good and I've seen evil and I've seen evil, like evil, evil, evil. I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
experienced it. So that's what makes me think. But I mean, it's not the church. It's just the people. The
Sure.
people would make it bad, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like that was a big deterrent for me also.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in it
Yeah.
and then I grew up in the politics of it also because my
Yeah.
family was like in it, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. You know.
But yeah, but the memory that I do have though, and I'll give some backstory too. I think why this moment in my life was the pinnacle moment, if you will, of why I love music so much. So as a kid, my parents tried to take me out to a lot of places, and no matter where they took me, I can never stay still. I can never be out long enough for them to enjoy their time because that was such a
Mhm.
nuisance. Okay. Um, like baseball games, whatever you want. They would take me, they wouldn't last more than an hour. They would last less than an hour and they'll leave because they couldn't, put up with my shit.
Mhm.
But there was this one time where I don't know what the reasoning was for this, but my dad decided to take me to Vegas with his friend. He used to call him Hoser or Jose. Um, and Jose used to play at the MGM Grand, and he used to play, basically, I think either poker or something. And he used to get free suites and free accommodations at the MGM Grand. So one day, My dad decided to take me when I was like 6 years old. Why did he decide to take me? I have no clue because what the hell am I going to be doing in Vegas as a 6 year old kid? You know, I don't even remember. But what I do remember is that he asked me, and I think I was 6 years old. I gotta ask him again. He probably doesn't remember, but you know, I think I was like 6 years old. I was really small, and I remember him asking me if I wanted to go see a concert, and I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what the hell's a concert, but I was like, yeah, let's go. You know, because I just wanted to spend time with him, so I went, and I go and I show up, and I come to find out later in life, but basically it's a band playing Spanish music, Spanish rock music, right? At least that's what I thought. And well, just to kind of tell you who it was Santana. It was Carlos Santana.
Oh shit, nice. Fuck
And
yeah.
I
No
remember
wonder.
I just sat there the
Mm,
whole time listening. Just sat there. That was I think it was the only thing ever that my parents didn't have to be like, so furious over me because I actually sat there and I listened. And I
mm,
just and I that's out of the whole Vegas trip, that's the only thing I remember. And I remember it to this day. I remember it clearly. I remember where Santana was up there, and I think at the new time they had just had a new. Well, I mean they have had I think multiple vocalists at this point, but they had a new vocalist was a young guy, and I just remember being mesmerized by this fucking guy playing the guitar on stage, and I was just like, "Holy shit, that's fucking cool!" I mean, all these guys, all this group is together creating this massive sound. And I was like, holy shit, I want to do that. And that was me. I think I was like 6. I could be wrong about the age, but I was around there. But it's funny because it wasn't until probably 4 or 5 years later where I finally asked my dad to purchase a instrument for me. And he did reluctantly, to be honest. He didn't want to buy me an instrument, but he
mm.
did. Um, and it's funny because I remember him telling me when he bought the instrument, like, "Hey, this is just a hobby, okay? Like, this is not going to be a career. This is not going to be. This is just a hobby. But I'm going to do it because you really want to do this, right?"
Mm.
Right. And I was like, "All right." And being my usual self, right? I was always very. I took that as a challenge, right? And I
Mhm.
remember telling him because he used to tell me, he gave me a lot of advice that suited him and his lifestyle, right? How he obviously grew up, right? So all his, his ideal look or his lookout on life was to basically make cash and take care of his family as well as he could because in his own upbringing, he didn't necessarily have a good upbringing with his dad. And so that was always his advice to me is like make sure that I do everything that I can to basically be to be able to give to my family and my and to my and my comments to him where it's like, first of all, what makes you think I want a family, and two, what makes you think that I want any kids in the fucking future? Like he's like, well, I'm just letting you know, I'm just letting you
I'm
know
just
this,
letting you know.
and I'm just like, all right, dude, let me just play the fucking guitar, you know, and and sure enough, I got on that thing. At first it was the clarinet, and then at the age of 11, he bought me the guitar. So my first instrument was actually the clarinet. The second was
Mm.
was the guitar. And the clarinet was basically the first year, well, 8 months of the academic year, right? He basically saw that I was dedicated to it. He saw me practicing the clarinet, and then at age 11, I was like, dude, I want a guitar, and he gave me the guitar with the same kind of parameters that say of this is just a hobby. It's not going to be something that you actually do in your life, whatever, right? And of course, being who I am, again, I took that as a challenge. I was like, well, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want to do.
Every time I heard your like yeah, we'll call it an accomplishment. Like your accomplishments on Facebook or you would tell me these like little things like, "Oh, I remember the first time you got into Michigan, like you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna see if I can, I'm gonna try to." You told me everything that you were gonna do, and you fucking did it. Like, oh, I'm so proud. I'm so proud to be like your brother. Like you have no idea. And I'm glad that we're able to do like these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So where does that come from, bro? like because you told me, you said, yeah, I'm gonna go to IBC for a couple years, and I'll either go to here or University of Michigan, to get my bachelor's,
Mm.
and then you were like, and I'll probably get my doctorates there, and then or I'll probably get my master's there, and probably work on my doctorates. I'll probably work on my doctorates, yeah, probably there, and then maybe teach. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's fucking awesome, dude. Like I don't have that. One now because I have kids.
Hmm.
Like yeah, there's people that can do it with kids, there's people that can't do it with kids, but me growing, I wasn't in that, um, you know, like that great of a situation to where I can just like do that, and I was
Yeah.
young,
Yeah.
pretty young, you know what I mean? But like you said, yeah, you said you would do it. You said you would do all that. So where does that like, is that something that you've always had when you were a little kid, or is that something that, kind of grew over time?
So I think it primarily stems from the competitive nature that I have pretty much it's innate, it's in me. Like as a younger kid, it was very immature, like for example, like, when I saw somebody do something, I would despise them and not like him because they can do something I couldn't. So back in the shadows, I would basically learn what they were doing and try to be better than they were. You know, so which is not a healthy way of approaching it. But then when as I got older, I found a way of utilizing that kind of competitive nature to a positive extent and to not only extend like a network, but also be like the way I saw it is at one point is like, why be enemies with everybody? We could be friends with everybody, right? So instead of being that person that being like hateful or envious or whatever negative connotation you want to have with that with competitive what competitors can bring, I decided to be like, you know what, that guy can do something that I can't do. There's obviously something that he's doing right in his life that was working for him. It might work for me. So let me go try to be friends with him. And I would go and I would start doing that. I would go talk to these people, be like, dude, how do you get that freaking killer guitar tone? Or how do you do that sweeping technique? Or how do you do that stuff? And they would teach me and they would tell me like this is what I did. I was like, okay, that's a good basis to take off because I had no idea where to start, because I didn't have any help. My dad was not necessarily literate in music. He had some prior experience a while back, but nobody in from my understanding, I was at the time the only one that was any kind of musical inclination apart from Andrew. And then from when I discovered, well, when Andrew showcased his raw talent, I was just like, well, where do we get it from? And we didn't know. So I basically all I had was myself, because my dad was always working. My mom, didn't really necessarily know what the hell I was talking about sometimes. Andrew was really small and nobody else I knew music, so there was just me. And I think, and I guess, and I mean, it took kind of going off of a tangent, but basically going back to your this kind of connects to my overall answer. But um, you know, my upbringing wasn't necessarily good all the time. I lived in a household where how can I explain this without making people mad?